The month of September has always been special for us. You may recall that it was so last year too. Well, this year, I'm taking you into the world of Dalit literature, Dalit poetry to be exact. So, now in September, every Friday, you will hear about Dalit poetry. Yes, I mean it, every Friday, because in September, it is one episode each Friday of the month. So, stay tuned in. You may recall that when I talk about some poems, some poets in fact, I do not go to the age in which they were written, because for some kinds of poetry, it's not the age in which they were written, but it's kind of poems that they are. So when I talk about Dalit poetry, time or even space, I think, is not of the essence. So Dalit poetry, to a great extent, has a silent anguish. You may wonder, how can it be silent when there are words? What I mean is, these poets don't go stand on rooftops or attend rallies to shout about what they feel, the pain that they feel, the trauma that they've been experiencing, the marginalization, the victimization, the oppression, the made to feel small and almost invisible, without an identity. All this and much more comes across in their poetry. And then the question arises, is it caste or class? Are they synonyms? Are they different? Can they coexist or not? Well, these are questions to which we find answers when we read Dalit poems. Important to remember that these poets also challenge set mores, and their linguistic experimentation is equally important. Our poem today is You Who Have Made the Mistake, and our poet Baburao Baoul. Baburao Baoul, 1930 to 2008, was a Marathi writer, a short story writer as well as a poet. He was considered an Ambedkarite Buddhist. What does that mean? Remember, the great Dalit leader, Ambedkar, had invited Dalits to join the Buddhist faith because he had promised them, he had told them that in Buddhism there was no caste. So Baburao Baoul was one of those Dalits who embraced Buddhism. He was born in Nasik and had his high school education there. Sadly, even as he was a student and later in life, he did a number of manual jobs. I feel sad when I have to say, not just manual, maybe the better word would be menial jobs. He began writing quite early, but his first collection of poems was published in 1963. Before that, he wrote for magazines. Jehra Mi Jat Chorali, that is in Marathi, translated into English, When I Concealed My Caste. It was a passionate depiction of the crude society. Some critics, some Dalit poets consider it to be an epic of the downtrodden, of the Dalits in our country. I believe later it was even made into a film. Like many other Dalit writers and thinkers of that century, of our times, he was influenced by Ambedkar. In addition, Other influences on his life were of Jyotiba Phule, who did so much for the education of the Dalits, as well as Karl Marx. Easy to understand because Karl Marx also believed that there should not be any difference between the rich and the poor. He thought of a classless society. So we have Baburao Baoul with a poem called You Who Have Made the Mistake. Who is the you and what is the mistake? Stay on. You who have made the mistake. I have to read at least the first part of the poem before I begin talking about the poem. Remember, reading a poem is very important, and reading aloud is even more important. So whenever you want to appreciate a poem, try and do that. Reading aloud gives you, in addition to the sense of the poem, the sound of the poem. And isn't that what makes poetry different from prose? So let me begin by reading the poem, You Who Have Made the Mistake. Not a mistake, but the mistake. Those who leave for foreign lands, embrace other tongue, dress in alien garb, and forget this country, them I salute. So right at the beginning of the poem, we realize that our poet, Baburao Baoul, is going to divide people into different kinds, maybe. And what is the first kind that he talks about? Those who leave for foreign lands. In our country, we've talked so much about the brain drain, people going away, giving up their Indian citizenship, etc., etc. And lots of debates about that. But I'll not go into that. We'll come back to our poet who says, those who leave for foreign lands, embrace other tongue, dress in alien garb, and forget this country. So this is the diasporic. And usually what do they do? They start speaking, and let's imagine, just as an example, they go to the US or Canada or UK or Australia. They start speaking English. They dress in alien garb. No more for them the sari or the chaniya choli or the pajama or the kurta, etc., etc. So they are dressing in an alien garb. And then he comes to the third point, which is, and forget this country. Because very soon, the country of their birth becomes a distant country, and they start thinking of the country where they now live as home. We are not having a debate on whether that is good or bad. But according to the poet, he says, them I salute. Those who have gone away to another country, who are now in an alien garb, who speak another language, who forget their home country, he says, them I salute. Maybe readers, we're wondering what's happening. What's he talking about? But wait on, what does he say next? And those who do not forget and don't change even after being beaten up for centuries, such hypocrites I ask. Now he's coming to the main point of the poem. He's now talking of people like him, people who are downtrodden, people who are outcasts, people who have been considered untouchable. And what does he say? Those who do not forget and don't change even after being beaten up for centuries. That's the sad part, that you're accepting your condition. You are not questioning. Such hypocrites, I ask, he says. And what is he asking them? What will you say if someone asked you, what is untouchability? Is it eternal like God? What's an untouchable like? What does he look like? Does he look like the very image of leprosy? Or like the prophet's enemy? Does he look like a heretic, a sinner, a profligate, or an atheist? You can see the anguish within him. Because remember, when we talk of somebody as being a Dalit, an untouchable, or an outcast, we are saying you're born like that. So if I was born poor, I could become rich. If my parents were illiterate, I could become literate. All that is possible. I'm rural, I can become urban. I'm urban, I can become rural. But here there's no chance, because you're born like that, you have to live like that, you have to die like that. That's the pity. So he says they don't change for centuries. And then there are rhetorical questions. Remember, one of the figures of speech we have talked about earlier. What does he say? What is untouchability? Is it eternal like God? What's an untouchable like? What does he look like? And then the sad part. Is he the very image of leprosy? Or the prophet's enemy? Does he look like a heretic, a sinner, a profligate, or an atheist? Why is it that some sections of society treat us as untouchables? Why do they keep us out of mainstream? Why do they push us into the margins of society? Why? Is it because of all these? He asks the question. And then he says, tell me, what will your answer be to the above questions? You who have made the mistake of being born in this country must now rectify it. And what do? Either leave the country or make war. What is your sin? What is your crime? That you were born in this country. Now, you have to do something to rectify it. So you've got two options. Either you leave the country like so many have done, or make war. Fight against it. Don't just lie down and allow yourself to be oppressed, to be victimized, to be made into a marginalized nobody in this society. What a sad story it is about everyone who is born a Dalit. As I finish talking about a poem, discussing a poem, thinking about it maybe, ruminating about it, I always ask myself, why this poem? And I want to remind you that there are hundreds of thousands of lakhs of poems in the world. And then I read them in English, because English is the language here. I read them in translation from poems across the world. And then I tell myself, well, this is a poem that has so much to offer. This is one more such poem that has so much to offer. And if anything that I want to do with this of Poets and Poetry by Indira, I think it is to spread a love of poetry, reading poetry, enjoying poetry, appreciating poetry. So do read more of Dalit poetry to understand what their pain and anguish is all about.